Have you ever tried holding your bladder in a tight pair of jeans and thought, this is torture? Now, multiply that by 20 layers of silk, lace, whale bone, and steel hoops, and you'll begin to understand what it meant to be a queen in the 17th or 18th century. Because here's the dirty little secret: while history gushes about coronations, affairs, and jewels, it conveniently forgets to mention something embarrassingly human. Queens had to pee. But how do you answer nature's call when you're dressed like a chandelier? Let's be clear, these weren't clothes. They were architectural traps. Fashion wasn't about comfort, it was about intimidation. The bigger, the wider, the heavier, the better. If you looked like you could barely walk without toppling over, congratulations, you were fashionable. The first layer was the chemise, a simple linen undergarment. Then came the corset, squeezing ribs so tight it could rearrange your organs. After that, petticoats upon petticoats, because obviously one wasn't enough. And finally, the pièce de résistance, the crinoline or fardingale. Imagine a massive cage of whale bone or metal that flared your skirt into a 6-foot-wide death trap. Some dresses were so big you couldn't pass through a doorway without turning sideways like a sofa delivery gone wrong. Sitting down was a negotiation. Bending over? Forget it. And squatting? Well, that was basically an Olympic event. But the real problem wasn't just mobility, it was biology. Underneath those chandeliers of fabric, queens had the same human body as everyone else. They drank wine, they ate meat, they got full bladders. And once the urge hit, the dress transformed into a prison. It wasn't just fashion, it was warfare. A battle between biology and brocade. And queens weren't naive, they knew exactly what was at stake. That's why they carried weapons of their own. Tiny porcelain weapons, hidden beneath skirts. But we'll get there. Because first, you need to picture this: a royal banquet, lasting hours. A queen sitting perfectly still, pretending to be divine, while her insides screamed for mercy. Every laugh, every polite smile, hiding the one thought burning in her head: how in God's name am I supposed to go to the bathroom in this thing? And hey, before we go any deeper into the royal bathroom saga, if you enjoy this kind of brutally honest history, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So, how did they do it? How did queens, duchesses, and ladies-in-waiting survive hours of ceremonies, endless balls, and carriage rides across muddy roads without turning into a tragicomic disaster? Enter the bordaloo. Forget what you think a toilet looks like. The bordaloo was a porcelain contraption, usually oval, shallow, and dainty enough to be mistaken for a gravy boat. Some even looked like teacups. Because nothing screams dignity like urinating into fine china while pretending you're sipping champagne. These little bowls were lifesavers, portable toilets designed to slide discreetly under the mountain of skirts. Some noblewomen carried them in handbags, tucked neatly next to lace fans and perfume vials. Others relied on maids to hold them like sacred relics, ready for battle at the first hint of desperation. Now, imagine the performance. The queen gives a subtle glance. A maid swoops in, lifting layer after layer of fabric, like peeling back the curtains of a particularly elaborate theater stage. Another maid steadies the porcelain bowl. A third distracted the room with small talk or a dramatic wave of the fan, camouflage in action. And through it all, the queen remains motionless. No flinch. No change in expression. Just serene, porcelain dignity, while secretly urinating into porcelain china. This wasn't scandal. This wasn't even unusual. It was etiquette. Because in royal circles, pretending nothing was happening was more important than hygiene, dignity, or comfort. If you could relieve yourself mid-banquet without anyone noticing, you weren't just noble, you were skilled. The bordaloo became a silent accomplice. Morning walks in the gardens, long church ceremonies, carriage journeys over cobblestones, all required tactical urination. Privacy was a fantasy. Improvisation was survival. And it wasn't just about small needs. When things got solid, when nature demanded more than a porcelain teacup, the operation grew even more absurd. That's when the close stool entered the scene, a padded, upholstered chair with a hidden chamber pot beneath. Think of it as a toilet disguised as a throne. Velvet cushions, tassels, even gilded trim, all serving one unglamorous purpose. But even then, the queen wasn't alone. Maids had to lift skirts, balance bodies, light incense, and fan away the smell. Sometimes praying for speed. Sometimes praying for mercy. Privacy? Forget it. In fact, the concept of being alone in a bathroom didn't exist. Every royal toilet break was a group performance, with choreography so precise it could rival a ballet. And yet, these women pulled it off. They smiled and posed, embodying the impossible elegance expected of women in cages. On the surface, it looked like a fancy armchair, velvet cushions, carved wood, tassels, maybe even gilded details. But beneath the seat lurked a chamber pot. A royal toilet disguised as furniture. Imagine a throne that demanded dignity while quietly collecting the least dignified parts of human life. Even this toilet throne offered no solitude. Every visit was an operation. Layers of petticoats lifted like stage curtains, corsets adjusted, skirts held in place by attendants who had trained for years in this bizarre choreography. Sometimes, it took 4 or 5 people just to manage what we'd call a bathroom break. And yet, silence was the rule. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody joked about it. Even queens who fasted for days before ceremonies, starving themselves to avoid accidents, never spoke of why. Bladders screamed. Bowels begged. And the performance continued. The result? Urinary infections, rashes, and stomach misery that went unrecorded in official histories. After all, chronic discomfort didn't fit the narrative of untouchable elegance. Meanwhile, Versailles itself was a palace of contradictions, golden mirrors above, filth below. Courtiers relieved themselves in stairwells, corners, and gardens when chamber pots weren't nearby. So yes, queens sat on thrones, but they didn't flush. And no matter how much perfume they wore, no crown could disguise the fact that they were human. Behind every portrait of serene dignity, there was a woman sweating, clenching, praying for her attendants to hurry. Because royalty wasn't about comfort. It was about keeping the mask on, even when the smell filled the room. If palace life was already humiliating, travel turned things into pure punishment. Royal carriages weren't luxury vehicles with plush seats and hidden bathrooms. They were wooden boxes on wheels, rattling over miles of uneven mud roads. No rest stops. No gas stations. No Her Majesty's bathroom sign waiting along the way. So, the Bordeloo came along, again, not as novelty, but as survival. Picture the scene. Inside a cramped carriage, the Queen sitting rigid while attendants performed the same elaborate ballet as in the palace. One held her skirts, another steadied the porcelain bowl, all while the carriage bounced over potholes. Versailles, the palace that embodied royal grandeur, only made the situation worse. Yes, it dazzled visitors with gold, mirrors, and chandeliers. But beneath the perfume, Versailles reeked. Plumbing was primitive. Toilets were scarce. Courtiers often relieved themselves in stairwells, gardens, or behind curtains. Perfume became armor, less for seduction, more for survival. And yet, queens endured it all while maintaining the illusion of grace. Dressed by teams of attendants in the morning, corseted until their ribs creaked, powdered and painted with toxic cosmetics, they began each day already trapped in cages of fabric and expectation. By the time they faced a banquet, a ball, or a ceremony, they weren't just symbols of wealth. They were prisoners of it. Wrapped in protocol and brocade, even breathing felt like defiance. Some queens even prepared by fasting before big events, nibbling tiny portions to avoid disasters mid-ceremony. Others avoided drinking water altogether. The fear of being caught in an accident inside 6 feet of brocade outweighed hunger or thirst. Because in royal courts, perfection wasn't just expected, it was mandatory. It wasn't until the 19th century that salvation crept in. Plumbing began to snake its way into palaces, timidly, like a servant afraid to make noise. The invention of the flush toilet promised a revolution: privacy, dignity, relief. Slowly, monarchs embraced it. Queen Victoria, ever skeptical, reportedly eyed the new contraptions as if they might explode at any moment. Still, progress moved forward, one flush at a time. And with plumbing came freedom. Corsets began to loosen. Skirts shrank. Women, royal or not, could finally walk, bend, breathe, and relieve themselves without needing a small army. For the first time in centuries, the bathroom became private. And yet, the legacy remains. Portraits of queens still hang in museums, frozen in silk, jewels, and impossible poise. They look divine. Eternal. Above the mess of ordinary life. But now you know the truth. Behind every portrait was a body, sweating, aching, desperate. Behind every crown was a bladder waiting for relief. Behind every myth of elegance was a very real woman, doing her business with style, strategy, and a poker face that hid everything. So next time you whisper, "How am I supposed to pee in this thing?" just know, queens asked first. And their answer came with porcelain, incense, and 3 very patient maids.